560.com. The materials and information provided are for informational purposes only and are not intended for use as diagnosis, prevention, or treatment of a health or other problem, or as a substitute for consulting a licensed medical professional. Some concepts presented herein may be theoretical and have little or no scientific substantiation. Users are advised to conduct their own diligence.
Welcome to Ask the Experts, where you'll learn about a variety of...
Mike's up in just a few.
We delve into holistic healing and whole food nutrition with the Natural Health Authority, Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing. And now here's Jason.
Mike's up.
Hello, everybody. This is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority, with another show on health. And today we're going to go into questions. Some of the questions that I've accumulated over the past couple weeks, and they've been piling up, and some of them, and in fact, I do have one of the questions like I mentioned about last week, which is the Lyme's disease. I will get to that one on Lyme's disease, but I'm still preparing that one. As I said, that one is a big can of worms, so hold on to your hats. That one's coming up. All right, so today, again, this is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. My company is strategichealing.us. Right now, I am on my Facebook page. I have a Strategic Healing. You can go to Facebook and type in Strategic Healing, and I'm on live right now, which you can type in questions, and you can go back and listen to this show, watch this show, and then later I post them on my YouTube channel, which is Jason Eagle QRA. QRA, which stands for Quantum Reflex Analysis. And that's what I am, is I am a quantum reflex analysis practitioner, which means that I was trained by Dr. Marshall. If you listen to the Healthline radio show, Dr. Bob Marshall, I trained with him. He personally certified me as a referral practitioner. I knew him, I loved him, and then I'm also what's called a soft tissue specialist, which that means that's my word for I'm not just a medical massage therapist. The type of body work that I do, which means I work on your body. And so sometimes people need to be moved, and sometimes we need to have deep tissue massage, medical massage. Sometimes we need some of the other techniques like what's called craniosacral. There's just a whole list of different types of stuff, which is similar to like what a chiropractor would do. Now, I'm not a chiropractor, so I don't do the ballistic adjustment, meaning I don't flip you over and crack your neck very quickly. However, when I'm working on people, because usually a chiropractor will spend maybe about 15 minutes with you max, usually it's just a few minutes of actually working on you. I spend a whole hour, an hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And by that time, you get cracked. By that time, pushing and pulling and stretching and moving, and I do techniques that would be similar to what's called like Tai Chi exercises, or what would be the Eastern type of stretching, shiatsu, and I have all of these different types of modalities, and I don't do just one thing. I mix it all up together. And then a lot of times, too, when I'm doing body work, it's the same thing as when I'm doing the QRA. I do what's called advanced kinesiological testing, which is I do muscle testing. So along the way, like I can test your organs. The muscle testing is a way of basically using your brain to test each one of your organs. But I can also test each one of your muscles and tendons and things like that. And so when a person comes in and says, boy, I've got this pain in my low back on my right side, I can test the muscles and find out exactly which muscle or which vertebrae it's coming from, which then gives me the ability to, instead of just working for an hour and saying, oh, I hope this works, we can ask your body and then we can do the movements and then retest it. Meaning, let's say I got a person that has a low back problem, and I, as I said on my show before, often look at these large leg muscles, which would be the quads would be in the front, the hamstrings would be in the back, you've got your calf muscles. So for instance, I'll give you a good example, is if you have a person that says, my low back is really hurting me, and sometimes we think it's coming from the vertebrae, or sometimes we think it's coming from a disc, but sometimes it's coming from a muscle. So let's say your quad muscle is super tight, and it is pulling on that. What I can do is there's specific, what's called kinesiological testing, meaning I can, a good example is, well, let's say, okay, I'm going to test and see if it's your psoas muscle. Psoas muscles is deep inside your low back. What you can do is, let's say you lay a person on, let's say, the massage table, and you'll say, okay, lay on your back with your arms to your side, and then I want you to point your toe and, let's say, lift your leg straight up, your right leg straight up, and that tests a particular muscle, and then I'll push down on that muscle, and if there's nothing wrong, you can resist against that, and it's strong. But if it's, many times people, when they have some of these back problems and it's coming from that particular muscle, you can't hold it up at all. Then what I'll do is I'll work on that muscle, or actually have you take your hands and touch that muscle and push into that muscle. Or for instance, let's figure out which vertebrae it's coming from. Is it coming from L4? Is it coming from L5? When you push, if it's weak, there's ways of testing it to see you can turn it off. And then there's ways of testing it where you can turn it on. Basically saying, if I fix that disc, will this muscle go back on? Or if I stretch this muscle, will this disc go back into place? And that's a way of immediately figuring it out, going, okay, I can figure out what to do, and then I do it, and then go back and retest it. So for instance, you can work on that particular disc or work on that particular muscle, and then flip that person over again and say, okay, let's try it again. Hold that muscle up. And they're like, wow, like I have the full energy back into there. And then they walk away for a week or two and it's fixed and they feel much, much better. This is a way of not just kind of, playing around. This is a way of really using medically sound techniques of how your brain works, because it's really your brain that's controlling all of these things. And again, for instance, let's say a person's low back, it's because their pelvis is tipped forward. So let's say you're sitting and you're standing and you can see a person's pelvis if it's tipped way forward, if they have, let's say, a real arch in their back, or it can be tipped too far back. So if it's tipped forward, usually it's the quad muscles, the muscles that are in the front. And then when you work on them, they go, wow, that really hurts a lot. And then I work on it and I stretch it. Sometimes we can even do things called Kinesio Taping, which is it will constantly stretch it throughout the day. And then what happens is then you can have a person say, okay, with a pelvis that tips forward, meaning when their back hurts and they have that excess arch, you can look at them and have them stand up and can see that arch in their back. Then you lay them down and you work on that quad muscle and you stretch it and you do like a quad stretch and a hamstring stretch. And I have these different tools, like these metal tools where you can dig into the muscle and strip that muscle, and then have a person stand back up and you can see within minutes, their pelvis levels out. And then they go, whoa, my back feels a lot better. Same thing with, like, say, a shoulder. You have a person who, let's say a person that has, let's say, they injured their shoulder and they can't lift their arm up above their head, but they can only lift up to a certain point, okay? Now, a lot of times this comes from, everyone will work on the shoulder muscle or they will work on the pec muscle, but there's a muscle that's like underneath your armpit that's in your side. That's what's called the lats, latissimus dorsi. That's the one that when you see people like the big strong man like Arnold that comes like at that triangle at their top. Well, have them lift up their arm and you can find that muscle's very, very tight. So you'll take a person who says, I really got a bad shoulder problem. Rotator cuff and I can't lift my shoulder. I've taken people that have not been able to lift their arm above their head for years. And then what you do is like, this is one of these shortcut techniques. It doesn't work for everybody. What works for most people is you strip out that muscle, which means I get in there and I dig at it and stretch at it and stretch at it. And people go, oh, that kind of hurts. But then I'll have them stand up and go, okay, now try and lift your arm above the head. And it goes whoop, way above. They're like, whoa, that's crazy. That's nuts. I can take people, off the street and do stuff like this. This lady that left me a really good Google review. And if you want to help me out, go and leave me a Google review. Those things really, really help out. If I've worked on you or if I've helped you over the radio or something like that, help me out. Go and do a Google review. But her husband had one of these problems. We went and stayed with them up north. They live up north in Interlaken. And so we were hanging out with them. My wife is one of her good friends, and her husband has had this shoulder problem, and he had it for a long time. And he couldn't lift his, it was the same thing, couldn't lift his arm. And I did this technique, and I don't remember if I put his clavicle, I think his clavicle was out of place, meaning I leaned him up against the wall and I pushed on his, and it popped back in place, or something like that. But basically, I did a technique on him that literally was like maybe 20 seconds worth of work. And then he went and his arm, and it's still fixed. So from that point until now, it's fixed. It doesn't bother him anymore. He can lift the arm, and both of them, like even me, I look at this stuff and go, wow, that's so cool that this stuff can happen so quickly. But if you do the right technique, that's how it works. Because again, if the clavicle, which is that collarbone, if the collarbone's just a hairline out of place, just a little bit because it fits inside a socket, what it will do is it will turn those muscles off. Meaning, are those muscles really torn, or are those muscles really dead? Or is it basically that bone is saying, because I'm not in the right place, I'm not going to let you go that far because you might tear. So a lot of times when we have, say, shoulder pain or hip pain, it's not necessarily that there's anything fully wrong there. It's that you have a bone out of place or a joint out of place, just slightly a little bit of hair, and it's creating a pain block. Basically, it's putting like spikes there so that when you get to that point, it sends pain signals to say, don't go there. Now, but if you move that bone back in place very quickly, then the bone says, oh, I'm fine. And then it won't send those pain signals. And you can see people can immediately, we're talking within seconds. Now, this doesn't happen to everybody, but a lot of times when you have shoulder problems, hip problems, those types of things, a very quick movement, and I'm not talking about a chiropractic movement in terms of ballistically jamming on or anything. I'm talking about moving it slowly back into place, or, again, releasing a muscle. You can have a muscle, let's say, like the latissimus dorsi, that armpit muscle. It's in a spasm. It's stuck. It's literally tightened up and shortened up, and you go to lift your arm, and it won't let it go because it's so tight. But a stripping type of movement of this deep tissue massage is you can very quickly, within 15 seconds, just go, stretch it, stretch it, stretch it, stretch it, stretch it. And then now it's lengthened that like an over tight rubber band. If you can stretch it, then now it lets that arm go. And so this is just some examples of what the body work does. So remember, that's one of the things that I do. This is Jason Eagle, your natural health authority, and we're going to get into these questions. So one of the first questions I have is nausea with supplements. I have a person, and I experience this sometimes too. There are sometimes I take supplements, and they're like, ugh, they make me feel irpy. They make me feel yucky. Now, one of the things is a good rule of thumb is then don't take it on an empty stomach. Take it with some food. So like some of the supplements like that you take in the morning that will be for, let's say, adrenals, or so that's the AdrenaVen or the RenaVen. If it's bothering you on an empty stomach, take it with a little bit of food, a bite of something. In general, and if you can tolerate milk, I've had people, like for instance, if you don't have a lactose intolerance, sometimes supplements go well with milk. Because what's in milk, and you could even do, let's say, a rice milk or an almond milk if you were, let's say, a vegan, or let's say intolerant to dairy. Why? Because it has fat in it. It has fat and protein. So another good thing is just eat a little protein, meaning a little bit of a hard-boiled egg, or eat some nuts or something like that. That helps to kind of protect your stomach from some of this stuff. Another thing that you can do is you can take so let's say I've had people that say, my kids, I need to give them these supplements, but they can't swallow pills. They can't swallow stuff. So what you do is you open them up, and most of them, except for the HCl, the hydrochloric acid, you can't do that because if it touches your teeth, it will eat away. It's an acid. So that one has to remain in the capsule. But all of the other ones, you can open them up and you can mix them in food. Like for little children, you can mix it in some applesauce, like a couple of these pills, and some of them taste not so great, but when you mix them with some applesauce, they're fine. Mix it with, let's say, some sweet potato or a potato. Or really old people that, like, for instance, or people that have this nausea type of thing, open the capsules up into some hot water and make it into a tea. Drink it as a tea. And a lot of times that protects your stomach so that you don't get nauseous. There's another supplement. If you have people that have tried all of that and they go, I've tried all these things and they still make me nauseous. What you do is you can take what's called the GastroVen or the stomach tea. It's these capsules that you open up into hot water, let it steep for about 20 minutes. And then you take this and then drink that. And then, it steeps for 10 minutes. Drink it 20 minutes before you're going to eat food or take supplements. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but what it does is it coats your stomach, because a lot of times the nauseousness can come from these things. Your stomach muscle doesn't like these things, and it goes, ugh, and it starts to kind of create like muscle spasms, stomach muscle spasms. The GastroVen or the stomach complex as a tea coats your stomach, which then is kind of a lining so that those things don't actually touch your stomach lining. They touch that. And so then your stomach doesn't even know that it's there, and it will help with the nausea. So that's for nausea with supplements. And again, you have to kind of play with yourself in terms of figuring out what works for me. Do I have to take it with a little bit of protein and fat? Can I take it with just a little bit of food? Do I have to make it as a tea? These different types of things. Okay, this is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. I'm going to take a little commercial break, and I'll be right back.
If we've learned anything from the recent medical crisis, it's how extremely important it is to maintain our good health. Diabetes, asthma, pain, and other underlying conditions weaken our ability to stave off viruses and heal even minor scrapes and cuts. This is why it is so vital to heal, not just treat, chronic health issues. It is possible to overcome underlying health issues and return to a strong and healthy state, and it can be done naturally without the inevitable side effects of medication. But first, you must make that choice to be healthy. Your next step is to contact Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing Center at 734-985-5891. Jason will get to the heart of what is really causing your underlying health issues. Then he'll create a customized plan that will get you back to your natural, healthy self. Get on the path to better health. Call 734-985-5891 to make your appointment with Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing. Or go online to wrdt560.com/askingtheexperts and click on Strategic Healing. And tune into AM 560 WRDT every Wednesday afternoon at 1 for healthy living advice from Jason Eagle on Ask the Experts.
All right. Okay, everybody. We are back. This is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. Again, you can see me on my Facebook page, which is Strategic Healing, and later on my YouTube channel, which is Jason Eagle QRA. Getting back into questions, I had a question about varicose veins, spider veins. Now, there's different stages of what's called varicose veins. Varicose veins can be when they first started these little spider veins. It looks like little spider webs, little blue or red spider webs, okay? Then when they get further along, then we'll start to bulge, and then they can get into the big ones. So let's first of all start with what varicose veins usually are caused by. Number one, varicose veins usually are related to some form of infection, a chronic infection. So we'll start with what are those infections? A gut infection, or the number one infection that most people are dealing with is, and this is related to high blood sugar and all these other things, is what's called Nanobacteria Infection. Because, see, this is part of the cardiovascular system. Your veins, you got arteries and veins. Arteries are the tubes that bring the oxygenated blood, has oxygen. It's like the gas mask that brings the oxygen to your cells. Your cells need the oxygen because they're full of carbon dioxide, because they breathe and then they exhale. All of your cells are just like you. Take it in, blow it out. In with the good, out with the bad. Okay, so what veins are is, that's why they're blue, is because the blue blood is blood that doesn't have oxygen anymore, and it's full of carbon dioxide. So veins are blood that's going back to the heart to or back to the lungs and the heart to drop off the carbon dioxide, meaning get rid of its junk, get rid of the garbage, empty your garbage can so that you have an empty container to fill up with oxygen again. So it's just like these workers. Your blood cells are workers, okay? Now, red blood cells are what carry the oxygen. That's why they're red. So when blood is red, that means because it's oxygenated. When blood becomes blue, and when you turn blue, your lips go blue, it's because you don't have enough oxygen, right? And so when blood has too much carbon dioxide and it's all the oxygen is gone, that's blue. So the varicose veins they're starting to bulge, right? And that's two things. One, it's because there's, as I said, the infection would be in your red blood cells. If you got too much blood sugar, it's constantly feeding these little bacteria called nanobacteria, which is been traced to the leading cause of most heart conditions and all kinds of other things, right? So now the other thing too that can be related to the varicose veins is that it's high blood pressure. Okay, so that means your pressure in your vein is too high. And that can be coming from, one, your heart is pumping too much, or two, the muscles, because see, all of the tubes are muscles. All of your little veins and arteries are a muscle. And so they can shrink or they can constrict or they can dilate. And they do that to help to pump the blood along. So what happens too is sometimes when it starts as a spider vein and then it goes into, let's say, the varicose veins, it's a weak muscle. The muscle's blowing out, right? And it's like it's weak and it can't hold back. So it's kind of like, your elastic waistband that's old, it starts to stretch and it doesn't bounce back. So most people's spider veins and varicose veins, they start in the legs first. Now, sometimes you can have people where it's around their nose, and that's from people blowing their nose too much or something like that. So it comes from kind of pressure. But most of the people, it starts in your feet, starts around your ankles, and then it starts to move up. Well, why? Number one, because the pressure inside your legs is higher because of, number one, kidneys. So there's two other organs that this is related to, liver and kidneys. So at first we'll start in the liver, because if the liver gets jammed up, so if your liver is full of too many toxins, it will then put pressure in your venous system, and then the kidneys too. So your liver is a filter and your kidneys are a filter. So if your kidneys start to get too clogged up with stuff, it reduces the amount of pressure, or it increases the pressure below in your lower half. So if people get a lot of leg swelling, but yet their upper body is fine, that's the kidneys. Because see, the kidneys go up and then go down. Well, down is downhill. And so downhill, gravity's helping it. So a lot of times it is, how do we fix this? The kidneys, which would be RenaVen, so taking some RenaVen, which helps to open the kidneys. The infection and stuff like that, the Nanobacteria Infection, that would be Allicidin, that would be the garlic. The HCL, meaning if we just increase the amount of hydrochloric acid so you really digest your food really well, then you're not sending as many waste products to jam up your liver and your kidneys. Then there's two specific products that you can take, which is if they're just starting, if they're in the beginning phases where they're little spider veins, that's where you take what's called VenaMend. And VenaMend has what's called diosmin in it. And then if they start to get bigger and bulgy, then you can go to what's called CircuZyme. And that has diosmin and hesperidin. Hesperidin comes from, again, going back to one of my shows before, which is God made this stupid easy, which is anything in the blood, anything in your blood condition, your circulation is the things out in the world that look like blood and look like veins. That's what it's for. So a lot of diosmin and hesperidin comes from blood oranges, which is very popular in Italy. And so the hesperidin, which helps to create what's called microcirculation, is this chemical that's very high in blood oranges. Again, blood oranges are these oranges, when you cut them open and you squeeze the juice, it looks just like blood. Cranberries do this too. And then a lot of the viney things out in the world that looks like vines, a lot of those different plants are for your circulation, okay? Then there's another thing too, which is the pain and the swelling. Let's say people, their legs hurt. If you got varicose veins or spider veins, and it hurts from being on your legs for a long time, standing or walking, then do what's called super elevation. Elevate your legs. Come home or when you're at some place. Sit down, or, the super elevation, I like this the best, which is lay down on the floor and put your legs on the back of a chair for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. And you'll notice that your legs will drain, and a lot of this excess fluid will drain out of your legs, and they'll feel better, right? So, and then there's one other thing that I would say for varicose veins, which is also, this goes with a later question I'm going to have about migraines. This is called grounding. Grounding is easy because it's free. What is grounding? Go outside somewhere, take off your shoes, bare feet, and put them on the place where the grass is. Now, you can sit there in a chair, or you can stand there, or you can walk there, whatever. But about 10 to 20 minutes, and varicose veins, you will see them get better. And they'll see pain in the legs get better. Same thing with migraines. You got migraines, headaches, go outside and do grounding. Stand on the ground. And a lot of times, because what happens is it's a charge. We build up too many positive ionic charges, and we build up static electricity in our body. And the ground will literally pull that out. There are so many, there's I think over 40 now peer-reviewed studies from medical universities that are doing big multi-million-dollar studies on grounding, which is the stuff that's free. Go outside and stand with your bare feet on the ground. It will pull these charges out of your body, will make your nervous system work better. And again, as I said, these are muscles. So sometimes the muscles are weak because the nerves are not working correctly. And again, we're holding up too much of a static charge. And so the muscles, since they are controlled by electricity of your brain, that's what grounding is. It pulls the bad charges out of you, puts the good charges into you, literally, okay? This is a real science in the sense of what happens in our body. And a lot of times you'll see conditions like headaches and nausea and anxiety and breathing problems in terms of shortness of breath, or that come from, let's say, anxiety or something like that. You will see going out and standing outside of the grass, or going outside for a walk with your bare feet on the grass in the park or somewhere in your backyard, makes you feel better. Go and try it. I dare you. If you're not feeling so great, go outside and do some grounding, and you will feel. Try this one. Get a baby who's crying, unconsolable. The baby won't stop crying. And bring that baby outside and ground. You don't put the baby's feet on the ground. You put your feet on the ground. So the mother or babysitter or something like that, take your shoes off and stand with that baby out there, or walk around, and you'll notice the baby will calm down, because you're connected. When the skin-to-skin contact connects charges, and so what goes through you goes through them, and it will pull these charges out of these babies. And a lot of times the babies, like colicky baby and stuff like that, where they're just inconsolable, it's because they're just holding too many of these charges. Okay, this is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. I'm going to get into this one, which is I've had some questions about the mask mandate in terms of what to do about the masks. And these have been business people as well as people, So what is the rule? What is the law? What is it? So this is going to talk about what's going on with this. Now, I'm in Michigan, and I've gone to what's called the executive order. The actual executive order is number 2020/153. That's the latest one from Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And then it's based upon the rescission of the first one, which is 2020-147. You can go to it yourself. This is the executive order. And the mask mandate applies to this, which is basically everybody. When you go outside and go into a store and all this other stuff. However, you go through who does it, and there's a whole list of who does it not apply to, which is we're not expecting these people to wear a mask. Number one, if you're under 5 years old, so you see little kid, that's up to a parent doing that if they want. But this is the legal exemption, meaning they don't have to, and you can't expect them. And if they don't, there's nothing you can say to them. They don't have to, right? Okay. B would be a person who cannot medically tolerate it. So what are some of the examples of not being able to medically tolerate a mask? One would be oxygen issues, meaning you got COPD or you got trouble breathing, right? You don't, asthma, these types of things. Wearing a mask will restrict the oxygen. Now, again, if you are sick, if you got a fever, if you got this, then don't go into the stores and don't put people at risk and things like that. But if you are asymptomatic, meaning you don't have any symptoms, you don't have a fever, this type of thing. And again, because the mask can block oxygen. And so this is based upon the executive order. And so medically cannot tolerate. Then we go down to a number of other ones. That was Section B. Section I would be voting. So when voting comes up, you don't have to wear a mask. That is the exception, which is when you're going to the voting, physically going to the polling, you don't have to wear it. Another one of the medically tolerable, in terms of you cannot medically tolerate, is anxiety. People who, when you put the mask on and it makes you feel anxious, which then shortens your breath, because if certain people have certain levels of anxiety, you can get, let's say, you start to have difficulty breathing and people can pass out. Or they just feel real anxious, which is bad for your health. Okay, so these are the medically accepted wishes. This is in the executive order. Does not apply to this. Now, when you go into a business, now it's stated businesses. Within this executive order, it says businesses, you should not accept people who don't have a mask unless, okay, the business says, now this is the exact wording, may, however, accept a customer's verbal representation because they fall within a specific or specified exemption. They may accept that. So this is businesses asking, what is the law here? And I recommend, if you are a person or a business, print this executive order up, put it on your phone, and so you have it to read it, because most people that are touting this, they don't know it, and I'm going off it. And so if you have a verbal representation, meaning I say, so when you walk into a store and they say, where is your mask? This is what you can say, which is there is a medical condition involved. Basically, there's a medical condition involved in why I'm not wearing the mask, okay? Now, you may have them, and again, if you were a business and you're afraid of being fined or anything like that, this is your way out. You can basically say, the person said they had a medical condition. And they basically say there is a medical condition involved, right? Okay, now we can get into where a person says, well, what is that medical condition? Where are your papers? You don't need papers, blah, blah, blah. Here's the next thing that you say, which is HIPAA law, federal HIPAA law prohibits me from discussing it. You cannot confirm nor deny. HIPAA law protects your medical records, and that includes verbal, meaning your verbal records. So that basically says, if they say, prove you have a medical condition, I'm not allowed to prove it. It is against HIPAA laws for me to discuss it with, unless I give consent. So that's the other thing, is if you do not consent to a person having your medical records, even verbally, then they are not allowed to have it, and you're not allowed to discuss it. So basically, everyone is protected from going, and including the stores that are afraid. And there's a lot of social pressure because, you'll have people with the mask on. Hey, don't let that person in. Now, if you're a business owner, if a person says that walks in and says, does not have a mask on, why don't you have a mask? If they say there's a medical condition, that's it. You don't have to go any further. You can basically, and if you're a business, you can have this executive order printed up, and it says right in fine print, or not fine print, right bold print. It says it right there. I am doing my due diligence, and I'm scot-free, which is they said they had a medical condition. You don't have to prove it, nobody. And so if you have a person saying, well, then you have to prove it, HIPAA law, federal HIPAA law protects your medical records, and that includes verbal, meaning You're not allowed to talk about it unless you consent to it. Nobody's allowed to know that information. It stops there. Now, you may have some people that want to still force you and say, well, then we don't have to take your money, right? I've had that happen before where they said, okay, well, then that means we don't have to take your money. If they're going to be jerks about it, then just walk away. Put your thing down and walk away. Or if you want to pull out your camera and you want to then camera record them, go ahead and do that too. Because based upon this executive order, as long as you give a verbal representation, that gives an out. They are completely, hey, they said they had a medical condition. That ends it, right? That's all you have to do. And you are protected by both parties, which would be the business as well as the customer. The customer is protected and the business is protected. So when people get into these fines and stuff like that, you are protected by this executive order. Also, the business is protected if they want to say, listen, we don't want to let people in without a mask. However, they are allowed to. It says may. May, however, accept a customer's verbal representation. That means there's no papers. What is this, Nazi Germany? You don't need papers, right? Because even in this, and then when it gets into, well, hey, where's your papers? Now, this is a state mandate, okay? This is Michigan, okay? But there is a federal law, which is the overarching federal law, that's HIPAA laws. Every person in every state, your medical records, including even verbally discussing it, is protected unless you give consent. It's no one's business, and you are protected. That was done so that like insurances cannot, not let you get insurance because of pre-existing condition, all of these different things. It's nobody's business to scope into your, whether it be electronic or even, listen, I heard him say that. That's nobody can hold that against you, and that is a federal HIPAA law, which is overarching all of the states. So if you're dealing with this, as I said, go to the website and print it up yourself, put it on and if they give you problems, go to those sections and just show it to them. This is what it is. And if they're going to go further than that, you are well within your rights to stand. And now they're well in the rights to call the cops if they want to, but the cops know this too, right? And all you have to do is basically just stand on what you have to say. There is a medical condition involved. Why do you not have your mask on? There's a medical condition involved. Well, what is that medical? HIPAA law prohibits me from discussing that. That's the end of it. And walk on, okay? So that's my piece about this, and this is not my opinion. This is not what I think. This is based upon the exact verbiage in the mandate, in the executive order. I've given you all the information you need to go research it yourself and stand upon it. What they would use against you, you can use for yourself because it was created to protect both parties, both the business and the customer. That's it. This is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority, and now we're going to get into a person asked about a nasal spray that I had talked about in the past, which is, it's called Xylere. Xylere, and what it stands for is xylitol. Now, xylitol, hold on one second, I gotta take a sip. That thing got me a little worked up, but I'm standing on the truth, okay? So, xylitol is one of what's called the 8 healing sugars. Xylitol is one of these, it's not an artificial, but it's a sugar substitute. Now, it comes from birch bark, which is maple syrup, comes from maple trees. Birch syrup, which is high in what the stuff called xylitol, Xylitol, which is well known in the dental industry. Instead of fluoride toothpaste, get a xylitol toothpaste. It has been proven by the Dental Association that 5 applications, which means two times of brushing your teeth, some xylitol gum. There's another thing called ice chips. There's the xylitol nasal spray. And so 5 applications has shown to kill what's called the caries dental. Caries is the infection that causes tooth decay. So if you have, getting your children, how do I want to protect my kids from, getting their tooth rotting out of their head? Number 1, reduce the sugar, get them to floss and brush their teeth. but also get them to use the xylitol. And the xylitol, because where is most of the dental infection coming from? It's actually coming from the gut. Where's most nasal problems coming from? It's coming from the gut. Your nose is connected to your gut. So if I have a dysbiosis, meaning too many of the bad guys going and not enough of the probiotics, xylitol is it's what's called a prebiotic fiber. Prebiotic means it feeds the probiotics. It feeds the healthy bacteria in your whole, but in particular, it's very helpful in the nasal pharynx area, which is the teeth, the nose, the ears, the eyes. Okay, so the Xylire, it comes in this pump and it comes in a squirt thing or a little pump thing. What I recommend is you basically, and you can get it I've seen it at CVS, I've seen it at Walgreens, I've seen it at Walmart, I've seen it at all these different places, or you can go to their website, Xlear, okay? And it comes in all these different forms. It even comes in these little packets that you can put in the neti pot when people are doing this neti pot, which is putting water up one nostril, then it comes out the other nostril. What it's doing is it's seeding this whole area with the prebiotic fiber. The Xylire, you do a couple squirts in each nostril about 4 times a day, and over a period of time, it will really help a person with nasal problems. And then eventually, the nasal problems in terms of constant stuffy nose and stuff like that will go away. Or let's say constant, I just spoke to a lady at a bank yesterday who had some nasal issues, and I recommended to her, it's this constant nasal drip type of thing. Well, sometimes the nasal drip, the body is creating mucus because there is infection up inside your different nasal cavities, which are behind your eyes, up above your eyes, below your eyes. They go deep inside your skull. And they are these caverns, right, that have this pillowy tissue of the soft tissue. Well, that's where the mucus forms. And mucus forms, so let's say a person breathes pollen or some sort of toxin, or a virus, okay? The mucus is this sticky material so that it grabs onto it like a bear hug and says, you ain't going nowhere. And the healthy mucus actually has infection, macrophages. It has these infectious fighting cells. It's part of your immune system. So if a person is constantly having a nasal drip, a lot of times it's because there is infection up inside those things and it's trying to wash it out. But a lot of times a person, because of chronic nasal conditions, the swelling can be inside there, and what happens is these things are trapped in there and it can't get in there. So the Xylire helps to wash it out, but it also helps to shrink those tissues, shrink inflammation, but it also will kill infection and then rebuild your what's called probiotics so that your natural immune system of your whole nasal pharynx area will get back to normal. And over a period of time, weeks to months, people that have constant nasal drip, it will go away. And then their nose clears up and they don't have this constant drip all the time. And that's what's called a Xylire, okay? Now, I'm going to get into another question here, or not even a question. This is a comment on Premier Research Labs, which is where I get all of my supplements from. That's what I sell, I sell the PRL, Premier Research Labs, which is this factory down in Texas. And people go, a lot of people, will say, well, you say yours is the best. How do I know that yours is the best? This was just presented on Facebook. Nicholas Lebinsky, who is the COO, Chief Operating Officer down there. Shout out to Nick. Hey, buddy, doing a great job down there. He posted this. Why are they the best? Premier Research Labs. Now, they produce all these different herbs and things like that, which they have to get them from places all over the world. And they come in containers, and then this company test those containers, and they can test the top, the middle, the bottom, because a lot of companies are shady and they will they'll put the good stuff on top and they'll hide the stuff. What do they do? PRL rejects 70% of raw materials. They are that picky. And why? Because 70% of what comes to them is fraud. So that means every other company that doesn't reject 70%, because that's what they find. They test, they reject it not because they're snooty and just because they're jerky or because of the price, because it tests wrong. And they use DNA testing, they use all kinds of stuff to prove it is what it says it is. It doesn't have any contaminants. So why do they reject 70% of it? that's because it's contaminated or it's false or it's fraudulent or it's not up to snuff. It's not good enough. And again, within that 70%, they find toxins. They find fraud, meaning liars and thieves that are in this business. And so any other company that doesn't reject and they're letting 100%, how much of that is in there? So if you're used to getting your stuff at, let's say, CVS or Walgreens or the cheap stuff that you get at Costco, these are companies that I guarantee you, they don't test this stuff. And if they do, they don't want to lose your money. And so they go, no one's going to notice it. And so they throw it in. Or they never find it because their level of testing. So Premier Research Labs, just on that level, is the best because, again, that says it all. We reject 70% of the stuff that comes to us. Nope, not good. Send it back. Nope, not good. We're not buying it. Or they bought it and they basically just throw it out. Because, and so they're willing to do that. They're willing to throw away money or they're willing to do this type of stuff because they're not taking any chances on giving you or me or anybody else or themselves, because they all take it themselves. That, number one, and I can go over again and again, but that to me is just, that's spectacular. Thumbs up and wonderful. Thank you for being who you are. So if you want to get the best, that is Premier Research Labs, Quantum Nutrition Labs. That's the stuff that I sell. That's the stuff that you can go to QN Labs and you can order it yourself and all that stuff. But come to me and get it from me because I'll tell you what to do, how to take it and how much, and I'll test your body and all this other stuff. Another thing, I'm going to talk about one of my posts, one of my, not YouTube, but one of my Facebook posts is we post pictures, or especially on Patreon. If you want to support me, sometimes people all over the world go, I'm never going to come see you, but I want to help you. And you can donate to me, give me some money, give me some support, give me a Google review. But my wife took a picture of me where she posted and she said, you're so cute. It was a rainy day and I'm out in the garden, and you should see pictures of our garden, but I was wearing my farmer's hat and my yellow coat, and I had just harvested bitter melon. Indians know about bitter melon. Bitter melon is this, and I've been eating bitter melon for years, and I used to go to this Asian market that they would cook food right there, and they would have the hot pot as well as the what's called dim sum, which is they have this food, or bento, and a lot of times they would have the bitter melon, and I, as an American, would order that and eat it, and they would go, oh, you eat that? Oh, we don't even eat that. Like I would eat the chicken feed and all kinds of other stuff. So I got turned on to bitter melon, and then I started growing it, and I love it. It is spectacular. As Americans, all over the world, people eat bitter, and I'll get into the science of bitter, but bitter is so helpful. It's one of these flavors that we are missing. And again, what does bitter do? Okay, and we've all done this to our little kids. It's kind of like a little funny torture kind of game, but give a little baby their first taste of a lemon and watch their face. It's a joke because they'll pucker up and they'll shiver. That's what your gallbladder does. So anytime a person eats something bitter, whether it be lemon or lime or arugula or radicchio as these greens and this stuff, but bitter melon is one of these things, or what they call bitter gourd. When we eat bitter things, our body has a reaction. And the reaction is it gets our liver gallbladder to contract. So that's why the Italians do a lot of bitter, like they'll have the arugula and stuff with their foods, especially with the high fat stuff. So like their lasagna that has lots of fat and lots of cheese, they'll combine it with like some sort of bitter type of thing. Because what it does is it cleans the bad cholesterol. It causes your liver gallbladder to squeeze, which is when your gallbladder squeezes, it releases bile, and bile is essentially soap. So when you eat fat or when you wash oily dishes, you use soap because, like that Dorn commercial, it reduces the fat into small little globules, it makes you be able to digest. So if you're eating high fat meals, which is very good, we want to combine it with some bitter now and then because it helps your gallbladder to work, okay? Bitter melon is very high in vitamin C, which is just good for everything. Very high in vitamin A, which is good for your skin and vision. It's super high in antioxidants. Antioxidants are these things that are just essential for life. Bitter melon or bitter gourd, one of its number one things is it's great for blood sugar. If you've got high A1C. There was a 3-month study that was done in terms of taking people and putting them on bitter melon pills or having them eat bitter melon, and it reduces if you got high A1C numbers, get into bitter melon. It drains the pancreas. Now, the Native Americans, they have the thing, which is Native Americans, the Indians, American Indians, knew about high blood sugar. They knew about this. And what they would talk about is one of their cures for high blood sugar is juniper berries. Juniper berries, which is that shrub out there, the little blueberry. If you bite into them, that's the main flavoring that's in gin. So that weird flavor, kind of herby flavor that's in gin, that's the main thing that's in gin is juniper. And you can take it as a pill form. But that's what they would say, is that it drains, it's astringent. So it will drain the sugar out of the pancreas and drain and get the insulin working better. It lowers cholesterol levels. If you have bad cholesterol levels, you can do bitter melon. You can take it in a pill form, but I recommend eating it. Where can you find it? You can either grow it, like we do, or you can find it at, let's say, a lot of Asian markets, like Nino Savalgio's that are, especially on Rochester Road. There's a lot of the Indians that live around there. Some of the Krogers, some of the Myers, where there's a lot of ethnic people living. You'll find all these, where the weird vegetables. What is bitter melon? It kind of looks like a cucumber, but it's bumpy. And it looks like it has warts on it. How do you cook it? Well, you cut it in half, and then you scrape the inside out, which is where the seeds and the core is. And then what I like to do is I like to cut it in half rounds and about a 1/2 inch thick. And then you fry it, so you can add it to stir fry. I like it with, let's say, beef or pork. You can do it with tofu. I like the flavor I like it with is like a beef that has, let's say, a soy sauce type of, so like an Asian beef, or even like, say, a hoisin sauce, which is soy sauce and a little bit of sweetness to it. It works really great in stir fries. You can also do like your stir fry instead of beef. You can use tofu or tempeh. Another great thing is they mix it with scrambled eggs. So what you'll do is you'll basically get some onions in a pan, get a hot pan, and a little bit of oil. I like sesame oil or some olive oil or whatever, coconut oil, and fry up some onions until they get kind of brown, that's caramelized. Then take that out of the pan. And then if you have some meat, add some meat in there and then fry that up. That flavors the meat. Then set that aside. Then take your bitter melon and just fry it up in that well-seasoned pan. Add a little bit more oil. And I like it a little bit crunchy, but my wife likes it a little bit kind of where it's a little softer. And then mix it all back together, and that's wonderful. Or if you're going to do it with eggs, you just fry it up in terms of your bitter melon, and you get it to the kind of cooked temperature, the al dente or doneness that you want. Then you throw in your eggs in there and you scramble it around until it gets kind of scrambled eggs. And that's a great way to do it. Really good for the gallbladder. Excellent. Bitter melon. I highly recommend it. This other question on migraines, or especially weather related. What do I do about migraines? Migraines are these headaches and stuff like that. Headaches, this is what Dr. Marshall wrote, can be due to a broad range of causes. Key areas to suspect is chronic infection, often dental infection, toxic colon. If I've said this before, a lot of times, if you are constipated, like a baby that's, I got a headache, or a child, get them to go poop. If you got to give them an enema, a lot of times when you have a migraine, take a laxative or, do an enema or drink, let's say, an extra, like a double dose of magnesium. Don't do this before you got to go to work and sit in the car. So how do I go to the bathroom if I really need to go to the bathroom? Take some extra magnesium, and that will flush your system out. A lot of times you'll notice that people who have migraines, if you get to them early enough and you clean the colon out, because why? Because the brain is trying to get out of your head because it's being poisoned. And where is it being poisoned? It's being poisoned in the bloodstream from your colon. So getting that stuff out, a toxic liver, clean your liver up. As I said before, if a person has migraines, go outside and do some grounding. Put your bare feet on the ground for about 10 minutes, 20 minutes. You'll notice it gets better. Another thing that a lot of times, especially weather related, like now, which is summertime. Why? Because people are in air conditioning. Air conditioning can really, like my wife, if it's really hot, we'll have to put the air conditioning on, but she says, okay, I can't stand anymore. It gives me a headache. And now I feel that too. If I'm sitting in an air-conditioned car or in an air-conditioned room too much. Why? Because air conditioning, it conditions the air, but one of the things it can do is it can change the static charges, which electricity in the body, and it can really make your brain feel not good. So again, if a person is having some chronic headaches and migraines, turn that air conditioning off. If you're in the car, turn that air conditioning, open the windows out. If you're absolutely, dying of heat, yes, you have to have the air conditioning. But get used to a little bit better of maybe try turning the air conditioning off, because a lot of times that's the thing that really is causing the headaches, especially the environmental ones, is that the air is not good. And yes, it's cool enough, but it's changing the air. And so opening the windows and getting fresh air. If you're driving in the car, open the windows, get some fresh air going. And sometimes, too, migraines can come from not breathing enough. So again, panic attacks, having anxiety, people wearing the mask. If you want to be, go into the store and wear the mask, but as soon as you get out, get that mask off. Don't wear it when you're walking down the street in front of people in terms of, because again, what do they say? Social distancing is number one. If you're walking outside, if you're driving in a car by yourself, really, seriously, the mask, right? Seriously. And a lot of times we're seeing there's a lot of conditions of it's causing problems in terms of breathing problems, oxygen problems, and anxiety problems. And sometimes anxiety can trigger a migraine, trigger a headache. Low oxygenation can trigger a headache. And so if you are in these conditions where it's safe to not do it, and again, it's safe because you're not sick, and if you're not sick, then don't wear it, right? And breathe. Start breathing and start slowing your breathing down. Start doing some breathing exercises. If you're dealing with a headache, migraine, deep breaths, okay? Here's the breathing technique. Take a breath in for 3 seconds. Hold it for 3 seconds. Take a breath out for 3 seconds. Hold it for 3 seconds. Did you hear me? Just calm down. Calm down. Listen to this. Watch. We'll go 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Inhale. Hold it. Exhale. Hold it. Calm down. Calm down. It's going to be okay. All of this is going to be okay. You're going to be okay. Oftentimes, anxiety and headaches and all this other stuff is you're holding your breath. You're not breathing enough. Calm down, and we can control that by your breathing. If you got a kid that's panicking, if you are the kid, even if you're 51 years old, and I'm going to be 51 in just a couple days here, 51 years old, you are still a kid. You still have the kid inside you. You still have to tell yourself, calm down. It's going to be okay, baby. Everything's going to be all right. You're going to get through it. I know this is stressful, but all a person has is a breath. You just have a breath to a breath to a breath. And again, take it one day at a time. Get simpler than that. Take it one breath at a time. Calm down. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. And that's one of the big secrets of headaches and migraines and stuff like that. It's just being able to calm yourself down. And only you can do it for yourself. Okay? Let's get into this next one, which is I'm really encouraging people. Okay, if people go, where is the future going to go? One of the answers are, what's going to happen in the world? What's going to happen to, the money and all this other stuff? First of all, grow some food. Grow some food, even if it's just a little bit. And again, in this wintertime, anybody can grow food. It's wintertime. You can't grow. Yes, you can. You can grow all kinds of seeds, especially like the broccoli. You can grow them as sprouts. You can grow them as microgreens. What do you need? You just need a window, right? A window during where the sunshine is. You can go get some seeds right now. Order some seeds online. And again, get broccoli, get cabbage, get these types of seeds, and you can sprout them. You can grow them in microgreens, which is where it grows, and it's about three leaves, okay? Microgreens is tiny, and again, add them to your salad. Add them in your juicing type of thing. Eat a handful of microgreens. There's more nutrition in microgreens than the full adult stage of the plant. So yes, when it's summertime, grow outside, but wintertime's coming up. Start growing some of your own food. Even if it's just a little bit, you'll feel better about yourself, and then start planning for next year where you're starting to eat more of what you grow, and then start sharing with other people, and you'll feel better about what's happening in this world, because you don't have to be dependent on your actual living on what's going on in this world. What's going on in this world? Make your own world. Make your own food world. Start growing some food, and you will feel better about everything else, okay? This is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. Breathe. Until next time, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Ask the Experts with Jason
All right, you're all set. Thank you.
Thank you.
You live a pain-free, high-energy, healthier life naturally. As a certified practitioner in multiple healing modalities, Jason creates a finely tuned and highly personalized program just for you that will get you back to living your best life. Get started today by calling 734-985-5891 to make your appointment, or go online to strategichealing.us. Strategic Healing is located at 2545 North Opdyke Road, Suite 106A in Auburn Hills. Ask the Experts with Jason Eagle of Strategic Healing can be heard every Wednesday at 1 p.m. right here on WRDT, the Word Station.
AM 560 is
Bye, everybody. See you later. Thank you. Thank you for all your support. Thank you for all your help. If you have any other questions, you can get a hold of me. Bye-bye.